Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the GolfRules Questions podcast. My name is Rossco, your co-host. Thank you once again for joining us, sitting virtually alongside the GolfRules Questions master himself, Blakey. Blakey, how are you? Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Rossco. It's good to be back. Another episode, so going really well.
We're getting into a little bit of a flow, a little bit more regularity with the podcast. We're trying to, are we aiming for a weekly one at the moment, Blakey?
Yeah, with the way the golf world is going, we're trying to report on rulings and whatnot that has happened in the golfing world because, you know, a big part of this podcast is about explaining the rules to everyday people like you and I that just want to know a little bit more about the rules of golf, and what they see on TV is what they want to know about.
Well, Blakey, I am an everyday person, not an everyday golfer at the moment, and I can't wait till I am an everyday golfer again, let me tell you that much. But what I did and have enjoyed is watching some golf on the TV since it's been back on. We've just had the second major of the year at the US Open, and the marvellous, fantastic, unbelievable, many would say, wing foot. And what a test of golf it was for all of the field, except for one man, the ultimate winner, Bryson, because he put on a bit of a bomb and gouge clinic and was the only person to shoot under par. So therefore, it was a test for the rest of the field that didn't make it under par. That course at Tillinghast, it's a beautiful course, and I don't think the coverage actually showed how stunning the course it was and how much the terrain did affect the golfers and the conditions, and the conditions therefore making it difficult being the length and depth of the rough, which the USGA is absolutely well known for, prepping USGA and US Open courses to be the toughest test in major championship golf. But it brought about some challenges, not only just from a player, but certainly something that we're going to talk about today. What was your take on the US Open and the conditions? We've spoken about your tournament experience before. What were some of the things that you saw, just general observations from a rules perspective and just a golf perspective?
Yeah, well, you touched exactly on, how a US Open is usually set up, and the USGA trying to increase the size of the rough or decrease the size of the fairway, make sure the greens are quite tricky and fast. I don't think they went over the top with this one. It's just a naturally hard course. It requires strategy to hit into those greens, because you saw some of the shots, you could actually hit away from the flag and it would come back towards the hole. But other shots, you could actually hit just to the left of the flag and it would roll off the green. And if you found yourself in that rough, there wasn't a guarantee that you'd get up and down.
So what were some of the things that the USGA would be, discussing and prepping a course like Wingfoot for that? Are they engaging with the ground staff on a regular basis, or is it just like, guys, we need this to be tough, so, you're the superintendent, go out and give it your best? Or what are they doing there?
No, they absolutely take control of the course and work with the superintendent, but are basically telling the superintendent how to design or how to set the course up. The USGA have agronomists. Most superintendents are, majors in agronomy these days, and the USGA also have an agronomist, and they'll be sending that agronomist out to these courses prior, a year out from these major championships, or that major championship, their other major amateur championships, and getting the courses set up how they wish. So, you've got to think about the players. Are they men? Are they women? Are they old? Are they young? Those kind of things. And obviously this is the best in the world that hit the ball the furthest in the world, between the two genders. So they really wanted to set it up as, as hard, as tough a test as they could. And so that includes, having smaller fairways and longer rough.
Did they have to acquire or get some more land or move some tees back to accommodate the length of the tournament play now? Did you hear of that?
I haven't heard of that, and
I think
that wasn't something I would know.
A couple of tees they moved back, but it just reminded me of, and probably a more closer to home example, and talking about tournaments and big tournaments and how they do influence the setup. But you go back to the President's Cup, which we talked about your involvement in as a referee in the previous episode, and I know that the PGA Tour were around Melbourne far in advance of that and identifying where tees had to be moved back to. I can't remember the holes, and I'm sorry, maybe the second on the west might be one, but they pushed the tee back about 30 metres as far as they could go back to an area which was otherwise rough. And over on the backside there was a house there that they acquired, and they pushed the tee back to there and things like that. So that sort of influence does come and obviously has an effect on the way that they set the courses up. Now, narrow fairways, 20 paces in some parts of the course, and long rough. It was bound to going to be a test for the players. What was your views on the play that you observed?
Yeah, I thought it was incredible to see how well the players handled it. A lot of people were saying 5 over would be the best score. You take out one person, and the best score was even par. So, that's a really good, well set up golf course. I'd like to see around that even par or 1 over. The other thing about, setting up a golf course tough, the pace of play is always going to be a lot longer. These guys take quite long to set up for their shots and whatnot. But then if you're making them play an extra 3 or 4 or 5 shots, then, that's another 3 or 4 minutes on top of their rounds. Plus, if it's a really long course, they've got to walk back from green to tee, that extra length of walking. So the pace of play was probably pretty bad. It's never easy to sort of see when you set up a golf course that tough. The pace of play is always going to be pretty shocking.
And I can't remember if we have spoken about this scenario, but you might want to explain it, what happens when it does. So obviously the cut is at a certain amount of people, and not always is that a neat, even amount of players. In the cut on the weekend, it led to Abraham Answer being the single person and first person off on the final day, played by himself. What happens from a scoring and scorers perspective when you've got a major tournament and someone playing by themselves?
Yeah, this gets spoken about or seen at the Masters quite a lot. It's quite an interesting sort of story at the Masters where the guy, I think he's one of the members, but he's a pretty good golfer, and he gets to go and play. If there's ever a single on the Saturday or Sunday, he gets to go and play with that professional. And I believe a couple of times he's actually beaten the person that he's playing with. So because Danny Lee had a 6-putt on the Saturday and then withdrew, because I think 62 qualified or made the cut on the Saturday. And then because Danny Lee actually withdrew on the Saturday night, that left 61 in the field, and Abraham Answer was that single person. So then the committee would allocate Abraham a marker, and they, not like the Masters, they would just have a marker, that a walking scorer basically, that just walks with Abraham and certifies the score.
Now, one thing happened, and once again, we touched on it in previous podcast episodes, and it was taking relief from a sprinkler head next to the putting green. Now, we hadn't really prepared to talk about this, but before we get into what we do want to talk about, we should talk about this, because it was an example where the rule played out to the advantage of the player, and that player was Bryson DeChambeau on the 17th hole in the final round. Now, it was done and dusted by then, but his ball went onto the green, took the slope, went off into the fringe and then onto the collar and was cuffed up against the long rough. But it was right next to, obviously interfering was a sprinkler head. So he got his referee across and then identified where he had to take relief. And he basically got to drop the ball on the fringe of the green. Did you see that?
There's a couple of things about this, Rossco, that and not annoyed me. Well, one annoyed me. The other one, it was just playing under the rules. But Bryson had the same type of ruling. I'm going to say, I think it was the one that he won.
The Rocket Morley?
Yeah, I think it was. And he had the same type of ruling. And so he's actually had that ruling 3 months ago. And Bryson knows a lot of things. He's a smart man. And it's annoying. It's actually annoying for me that the player had to get the referee in. He shouldn't have needed to get the referee involved. It was a very simple ruling, and he's in the rocket mortgage. He dropped it from one sprinkler head onto another sprinkler head so that he could then drop it from that sprinkler head into the fairway. And I've got that on my YouTube. It's something like Bryson takes 4 drops or something like that. So that did annoy me. It didn't annoy me that he gets to drop from the rough to the fairway. That's just part of the rules, and I have no issue with that. Although it does look a little bit silly when you've ended up with this terrible lie and then suddenly you get like a perfect lie. But he wasn't the only one that it actually happened to, that they caught it on camera. It happened to Tiger Woods, and Tiger was seen taking it from the rough to the second or the first cut. So that, which is a big help, because that first cut's pretty nice compared to the second cut.
Well, it ultimately didn't have any impact on the result, but it would have been really interesting had it happened and had an impact on the result. Now, it was obviously within the rules, and as you say, it was a pretty simple rule to adjudicate on. Probably didn't need to call a rules referee across, but it's always going to surprise you as what they do and don't want to get rules referees involved. And it seems like they want to get rules referees involved for every decision, but that's okay. But yeah, it would have been much more interesting had that had an impact on the overall result. But just one that was obvious and one that we've spoken about before, and one that comes up probably on a weekly basis when we're playing golf. And the other example, it is on the YouTube, where you can get relief on relief and then end up in a way better position. There's probably something that we can, you should go and check that out on the YouTube. How many videos back would that be? Way down the archive?
That would be about 40 back, I think. 40. Yeah. I think I've probably released 40 since then. And I've actually done an education one on this exact ruling about dropping from the rough to the fairway. That people can go and watch as well. And then you should watch till the end of my education video there, because it's got quite a funny end, if I do say so.
But the point is, it's not taking relief from the rough to the fairway. That's not the objective. It's just taking relief at the nearest point. And if that nearest point happens to be on the fairway, then that's so be it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's taking relief from a condition that's in the general area. And because the rough and the fairway are both considered the general area, then the relief area covers both areas. It's not like if you were taking relief from a bunker and your relief area was bunker and fairway, you could drop it in the fairway. They're two different parts of the course, two different areas of the course. In this case, rough and fairway are both considered general area.
And once again, in determining the distance between where the nearest point is and the one club length, he can use the longest club. He doesn't, because he's going to putt it, he doesn't have to use the putter. He can use his driver to measure out that dropping area or that relief area. Yeah?
You have to use your longest club except your putter. So Bryson's got one of those arm lock putters. Mm-hmm. That would almost be, it would be close. That would almost be his longest club in his bag. Yeah, it would be pretty close. But he can't use that. He has to use his driver. And you don't have to use your driver. You can use a wedge to understand, have an idea of where the relief area is. But the relief area is the driver. So if you dropped it outside what was the length of a wedge, but it was inside the length of your driver and it came to rest there, outside a wedge, inside your driver, and you go, oh, it's outside my wedge, and picked it up, you've actually picked up your ball in play, and there's a possible 1-stroke penalty there.
There you go. Always use your driver. Now.
Well, yeah, well, that's it. And you know, it's a good point. So you work out your nearest point using the club that you would have used to hit the shot if the condition wasn't there. So if it was in the rough, he's not going to use his putter. He's going to use a wedge or whatever. Then you use the club length. Then once it's back in play, it's away from the condition, then you can use whatever club you want once you've taken your relief from that condition.
Now, speaking of conditions and getting relief from conditions, what a great little interlude to the real important topic. One of the golfers that was on fire at one point in the tournament and ultimately faded away, and controversy is never far away from him, Patrick Reed, talking about being laid up against collars of greenside rough and so on and so forth. He obviously got an advantage, to me, in my perspective, from improving his lie. It was much talked about, but there was obviously different schools of thought on it. You know, you look at the Twitter spheres, you look at the Instagrams, you look at even the USGA, and everyone had a variety of opinions on it. I know what I think. What about you, Blakey? You're the guru.
Yeah, so I also have an opinion studying the rules, but it was really important to note that this tournament was a USGA tournament. They make the rules. It's not like this tournament was run by the PGA Tour. It's not like this tournament was run by the New Zealand Golf Association. The USGA make the rules in collaboration with the R&A and some other people that sit on this rule. We just call it ruling body type thing, rules board. So, you know, if they were happy with it, then that is the precedent set for what you can and can't do, basically. But what Patrick did, in our eyes, because I agree with you, Rossco, is, well, let me start first by sort of talking about the rule. So it's Rule 8.1. That was what everyone was believing he had breached. And it says that you're not allowed to, because it's one of the biggest principles of the rules of golf, and it says you're not allowed to improve your area of conditions affecting your stroke, your next stroke. Okay? So what are your conditions? Your lie, your ball, your area of intended swing, your area of stance, and your line of play. And you're not allowed to improve those areas, those conditions to affect those, affect your next stroke. So if you've got a tree branch in your swing, you're not allowed to break it off to help yourself out. If you've got a boundary stake in your swing, or you're standing there and you've got a boundary stake in your way, you're not allowed to move that, okay? If you do, if you break that branch, if you move that stake, then you've improved your conditions, and you're going to, in all likelihood, you've improved your conditions, and you're going to get a general penalty for that. Now, there are some things that it does allow. Say in a bunker, you're not allowed to build a stance, by moving sand, but you are allowed to firmly place your feet in the sand in taking your stance. A lot of this can be quite subjective. there has to be an improvement that must be stressed. You could break a branch and actually worsen your conditions, and the only penalty you're going to get is the fact that you now have to play with these worsened conditions. So there must be an improvement. You are allowed to, so this is where we get into the Patrick Reed situation. You are allowed to lightly ground your club. To lightly ground your club, and there is an interpretation there. To lightly ground your club means to rest the club on the ground. It doesn't mean to push the club into the ground. Okay, so if you lightly ground your club, which is to rest your club, the weight of the club on the ground, there could be an improvement, but if you're doing it under what is allowed, then that's not considered an improvement that breaches that rule. But as soon as you start pushing the club into the ground, so it's not only the weight of the club, but it's also more force from you. As soon as you start doing that, now you're starting to get into the territory of improving your lie, if you have improved your lie, and there's going to be a breach. Now, do you think that Patrick lightly grounded his club? He just rested the club, the weight of the club on the ground, or do you think he sort of more pushed the club into the ground?
Look, in defence of, somewhat defence, if it is defensible, of Patrick, it's always harder to see from a TV perspective. You know, they've got the camera zoomed in, they're slow-moing it, and it's like an offside call in soccer and all that sort of thing. It always looks offside when it's in slow-mo and freeze frame and all that sort of thing. So I grant the fact that it potentially maybe looked worse. Now, I didn't, see enough of it in normal vision, but to me, it looked pretty bad. To me, it looked like he didn't lightly ground his club. To me, it looked like he lightly grounded his club, and then he went a little bit more into trying to get that leading edge into the back of the ball a bit better. Yeah, which I grant the fact that he's probably just trying to see that he can get the leading edge in, but the byproduct of that is you're pushing the grass out of the way. You're improving your lie. So I don't think you can argue with it, personally.
So going into that a little bit further, because we talked about Lexi Thompson at the AIG Women's British Open a couple of weeks back, where she actually looked like she had improved her lie by moving grass out of the way, but she was lucky in that the wind blew the grass back into the same position. They believed it was the same position, and so she didn't get an improvement. Do you think after Patrick grounded his club, whether it was lightly or a little bit harder than lightly, do you think the grass sprung back up, and so therefore it actually restored its own conditions, and there was no improvement? What do you think there?
I would like to look at it again, but from what I've looked at, I think that the grass didn't go back to exactly the same way as it was before he took the stroke.
And that's what I think as well. And so, I'm obviously wrong. This is my opinion, and I'm wrong because the rule makers were sitting right there saying what the rule is. But it just, in my mind, I talked about this with the John Rahm situation. I just don't like the fact that players are doing that in the first place, thinking that there's a grey line. It just shouldn't. You just should be so much more cautious around your ball than even thinking about trying to push the grass down. But obviously that's the precedent set now, so we'll just have to roll with it.
The problem with the precedent being set is that everyday golfers like you and me now then start to be able to use that as taking our own liberties. And I don't mean that to say that we're all going to run out there and start prodding at the ground and saying, well, it's okay for, Patrick Reed and the USGA it's okay for me. But, there are so many variations of it. You can't really just say that, oh, well, it was like that, so it's okay, because it's a grey area. And there are other areas of this rule that, you just know that pop up on a weekly basis in clubland. Some people either know, don't care, or some people just don't know. Like moving rocks. Rocks that are behind the ball that are, even a little bit into the ground on a hard pan surface. Now you can move a loose impediment, but if it's attached to the ground and you've got to pull it out, but it's going to damage your new, whatever brand of club, you can't take it out. And there's all those sorts of things that happen. And this sort of falls into that area to me of well, it was okay there, so I'm going to do that. And who's going to judge someone now who's going to call someone for doing it? Who's going to stop doing it? I don't know. It's hard to think like that, when you don't do it. So I don't know. I don't want to paint everyone in a bad picture. That's not what I'm trying to do. But it's just basically I'm trying to say that it creates a grey area.
Yeah, exactly, Rossco. And it's quite interesting. It's not that I'm sitting on the same fence as you, and that I'm not wanting to paint everyone with the same brush, but I'd like it. It just seems that it would be easier, if we were all more cautious than less cautious.
Yeah.
If the standard was set higher, the pros play this way, then we'll play this way.
Well, it's like any form of excellence. You move up towards something, and when you're not seeing that same level of excellence being applied, you move down with it. So the standards have to be upheld, and everyone else is to uphold them to that level.
Plus the fact that golf is different. Golf is where you uphold the rules and you possibly penalize yourself when no one else saw anything. We shouldn't be going to this situation where people are following golfers trying to, prove that person has disreputable. What's the word I'm thinking? That's an Ivor for you.
That is an Ivor.
An unreputable.
I'm just going to let you go with it, mate. I'm not
bad.
I'm not Matt Kuchar or Patrick Reed steam shoveling you out of that hole, mate. Don't worry.
A bad character, and that's not what golf is. Golf is about having people with good character. So that's what I have to say about the play the course as you find it. Again, if you find yourself in a divot, if you find yourself in a bad lie, you've just got to handle that. You just got to accept that. That is what golf is.
Well, if it starts to happen in clubland, the USGA and the other rules bodies, the RNA with the Lexi Thompson one, and then whoever presides as an Ivor, whoever presides over the Matt Kuchar one, for example, that was on the PGA Tour. And we've spoken about it on the My Love of Golf podcast. Rockets all over those guys, but where Matt Kuchar was able to move loose impediments in a wasteland, so he was allowed to move loose impediments, but it was a sandy wasteland. And if you watch the vision of that, and I'm not sure if that's on the Golf Rules Questions YouTube channel, but he essentially, picks out sand grain by grain until he's improved his lie. But he had a rules official there that said, no, that's all good. And he went and proceeded to basically dig a trench around his ball. Now, it's the same sort of concept as what we're talking about. Different execution of the concept, but improved his lie by moving a million movable obstructions, you could argue. Now, it was grains of sand. That's dust. You can't move dirt. You can't put your finger behind your ball and move a heap of dirt on that's sitting on top of some hard pan so you can get your leading edge. You just can't do that. So, these guys that are, working at the highest level, your colleagues, your rules officiating colleagues, and then the players, they've created a couple of situations which would leave, everyday golfers like you and I in some area of question in relation to how you have just described how the game is intended to be played.
Yeah, some might have differing opinions that we're being too rulesy, too, officious about it, but it's not about that. I'm not trying to put the rules on everyone. I'm trying to say, just accept the lie that you have. Play the course as you find it. Play the ball as it lies. Don't try and get away with something that's not there. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying, that guy needs to be penalised and, we need to dish out penalties. I accept that, it's not about trying to dish out penalties. We don't actually want to penalise people. We just wish that they would do the right thing before they do the wrong thing.
Well, if anyone's got any questions on this topic, it's probably one that lends itself to people having been involved in different situations or scenarios or incidents, even imbroglios. Please feel free to contact us via any of the means, Instagram, message, leave a voice message on Anchor, because we'd love to hear that and we'd give it a play, and we'd love to be able to respond to it, especially if you've, had these situations occur where you've had to deal with it. It's always good to get some real life perspective other than from myself and Blakey.
So we should finish up there, but I think we have some really important backgrounds to our previous background, episode 8. What was yours, Rossco?
Episode 8. There's been that many backgrounds, Blakey. I'm losing track of the backgrounds. I'm on that many Zooms, that many podcasts, that many meetings. I always try and spice it up with a different background of some exotic destination that I've been party to. Excuse my dogs barking in the background. They're probably waiting for their afternoon walk. Shut up! Sorry for the interruption there, people. The normal programming has resumed. The dogs are now under control. No dogs were harmed in the making of this podcast. As I was saying, Blakey, in episode 8, my background, and did anyone actually contact us to have a play of the background bingo, which we'd love everyone to have a play of the background bingo. We're putting all this effort in. Was Tralee. No, last one with the hut, the school. Why don't you tease me? Like some little place in country New South Wales that I might have went to school. That's right. You tease me. It was Gullen.
Yes.
That's the starters hut at Gullen in East Lothian, Scotland. One of my favourite places to play golf. Probably definitely the first ever links experience that I played. It's important to me because it's an area of Scotland that my dad, when he lived there as a young man, would ride his bike down from Edinburgh on the weekend. They would ride from Edinburgh down to Gullen and do a loop and maybe stop at the pub on the way and have a drink and then return back to Edinburgh on their bikes. So that was Gullen. We do have another background here. Also, same part of the world. I think this one's a bit easy. You get bonus points if you can tell me what hole it is. You can tell me a bit bonus points if you can see my ball in the video, which is sitting behind me.
Nah, can't see it.
That might be on. Well, there's a ball sitting behind me. If you do,
it's hold, Rossco.
If you do take an interest in this YouTube video after listening to us talking about pictures on a podcast, and thanks for tuning in for this part. There is a ball on the green there that is there for 1.
Oh, stop it. And
3. You have to guess what hole it is.
So someone guessed Tralee.
Ah, yes. Who guessed Tralee? Yes, they did.
Big P.
Big P, one of the favourite contributors, guessed Tralee. Very good. Do we know if Big P had been to Tralee?
No, he hasn't.
Okay. I wonder what gave it away. It was a bit of a obscure picture, but wonderful links of Tralee down in Tralee is in Kerry, I'm pretty sure is County Kerry on the southwest coast of Ireland, Arnold Palmer course, 2 different nines. The front 9 is different to the back 9. The back 9 is one of the most exotic 9s of golf that you'll ever play. The front 9's also very nice, and you can see that was probably the second hole, I think, second or third hole, one of the early holes in the round there. Little castles on the points, which is significant in Ireland because that's where they used to look at for the Vikings and the Spanish and whoever else wanted to invade that part of the world. So, it was a great day at Tralee, and I could tell you a wonderful story about Tralee. We've mentioned in the past about Mission Hills and how I played there in 1987. Well, when I was there in 1987, Blakey, and not wanting to tell another story, but I will, I stayed with a wonderful family. Dr. Barber was my host father for the month or so that I stayed playing golf in Palm Springs in 1987 as a young fella, and he'd take me to Mission Hills every day. Well, when I got to Tralee, there was 7 busloads of international tourists there, and I was by myself. And the starter says, "You're off first, young man, off you go." And by that stage, I was getting a bit fed up with my own company. I said, "Is there anyone in all this group of people from other parts of the world that I could play with?" He said, "There's a father and daughter there. I'll ask them if you can go with them." They said kindly, yes, the young Australian man can come with us. It turns out that the gentleman that I was playing with was best friends with Dr. Barber, who I stayed with. He was a member. We got down there. He said, "Where are you from, young man?" I said, "Australia." He said, "Where are you from?" "California." "Great, I've got that much." "Palm Springs." "Probably never heard of it." So I've actually been there. "Where do you play golf in the desert there, sir?" He said, "I'm a member at Mission Hills." "Do you know it?" I said, "Do I know it?" I said, "Do you know Keenan T. Barber?" He went, "Keenan Barber, he's my best mate." So we had a great day. There you go.
Well, Big P got Tralee, and he also got my one, which was Jack's Point. No one got yours of Gullen, and no one got mine of Lakelands in Sydney, which was a little bit tough. I'm pretty sure that that someone, or at least 400 people that watch the podcast on YouTube, will get these 2 courses. They are one your ones. Yeah, just if you know golf, just guess. And for my one, surely you've seen this on a website somewhere.
Yeah, mine could actually be one of 2 courses in this particular part of the world.
Yes, that's true.
But it's pretty hard to escape not knowing what part of the world it is with that vista in the background. But I tried to pick a pretty sedate sort of hole. There you go. Pretty boring, flat green. It's drivable. Oh,
well, we do have another listener's question, and we will get to that in the next episode. It's a good one too. So stay tuned for that. But I think it's time to wrap it up today, Rossco. Anything else you want to say?
Are you wrapping me up?
I think
that's my job in this podcast, Blakey. Let's just get the lines of demarcation right. You rules, me wrap up podcast. All right. I think that's time. And please, we'd love to hear more questions. Please reach out to Blakey. He's the one that gets all the questions and deals them out and answers them all, more importantly. So if you have any questions, even if you just want to say good day. There was an Ivor today. Ivor wrote back to us in a lovely letter saying, yes, you can call a segment in my honour, but also in conjunctive honour with Ivor Robson, who Ivor was a big fan of. So the Ivors is a thing. You've given yourself 4 Ivors today, Blakey. But we will get more real Ivors, and that's people mispronouncing tour players, golf players' names. We'll get those as we go along. Just having a bit of fun. Well, thanks again. Once again, enjoyed having your company here, Blakey. Always learning, and that's all we can do in life, is always learning and being better. And
see you guys.
Until next time, thanks for joining us on the GolfRules Questions podcast.